The darkness between stars held many secrets, but none more terrible than the Kethmori. For 3,000 years they had swept across the galaxy like a plague of nightmares. Their ships were black as the void, shaped like massive insects with razor-sharp edges that caught no light. When they arrived at a new world, hope died first. Captain Zextal stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Bone Harvest. His body was a towering mass of dark chitin and muscle, with 6 arms that ended in claws sharp enough to cut through steel. His head was a horror of compound eyes and mandibles that dripped acid, but it was not his physical form that made entire civilizations surrender without firing a shot. It was what lived inside his mind. The Kethmori were born with a gift that other species called a curse. They could reach into the thoughts of any living thing and plant seeds of pure terror. A single Kethmori could drive 1,000 soldiers mad with fear before they even saw their enemy. Entire planets had surrendered just from hearing whispered stories of what the Kethmori could do to a mind. Zextal looked at the holographic map floating before him. Red dots marked the worlds they had conquered. Green dots showed targets still to be claimed. The map was mostly red now. Only a few stubborn pockets of resistance remained, and those would fall soon enough. Everything always fell to the Kethmori in the end. His communication officer, a smaller Kethmori named Vexhai, approached with obvious excitement. "Captain, we have received new intelligence from our spies in the Galactic Council." Zextal's mandibles clicked in amusement. The so-called Galactic Council was a joke, a gathering of weak species who spent more time arguing than fighting. They had tried to organize resistance against the Kethmori many times. Each attempt had ended in screaming and madness. "What desperate scheme have they hatched now?" Zextal asked. "They speak of a new species, Captain. One that has emerged from a quarantined system called Sol. The Council has classified their homeworld as a Class 12 death world." Zextal's compound eyes focused sharply. A Class 12 death world was a planet so hostile that complex life should not exist there. The galactic community used such worlds as prisons or weapons testing sites. Nothing intelligent could possibly evolve in such hell. "Impossible," Zextal said. "No species can achieve spaceflight from a Class 12 world. The environment would kill them long before they developed technology." Vexhai's own eyes gleamed with malicious joy. "That is what makes it interesting, Captain. These creatures call themselves humans. They not only survived their death world but somehow thrived on it. Our spies report that the Council secretly hopes these humans might slow our advance." The bridge fell silent except for the low hum of the ship's engines. Then Zextal began to laugh. It was a sound like breaking glass mixed with the screams of dying animals. The other Kethmori on the bridge joined in, creating a chorus that would have driven most species to madness just from hearing it. "The Council thinks Deathworlders can stop us?" Zextal wiped acid tears from his eyes. "They are more desperate than I thought. Very well. We shall visit these humans and add their world to our collection. It has been too long since we had proper entertainment." He turned to his navigator. "Set course for the Sol system, and send word to the fleet. We hunt new prey." The massive Kethmori war fleet began to move through space like a swarm of metal locusts. Behind them lay the broken remains of the Altair system, where 3 billion Vegan refugees had been reduced to gibbering madness in a single day. Ahead lay Earth, a small blue world that had no idea what was coming for it. Zextal spent the journey studying what little information the Kethmori had gathered about humans. The reports were confusing and contradictory. These humans seemed to have developed from persistence hunters, creatures that chased their prey across vast distances until exhaustion killed them. They had survived ice ages, massive volcanic eruptions, and asteroid impacts that had wiped out previous dominant species on their world. Most puzzling of all, they had spent most of their recorded history fighting each other. Wars that lasted decades, weapons that could poison entire continents, technologies that could split the very atoms of matter and unleash the power of stars. Yet somehow, instead of destroying themselves, they had grown stronger. Curious, Zextal mused as he read reports of human conflicts. They wage war with the enthusiasm we reserve for art. As the fleet drew closer to the Sol system, Zextal prepared his mind for the coming conquest. He would start with a demonstration of Kethmori power. A few thousand humans driven mad with terror would convince the rest to surrender. Then he would claim their death world as a trophy. Perhaps he would keep some humans as pets, the way other species kept small harmless creatures for amusement. The ship's sensors began picking up signals from the human homeworld. Radio transmissions filled with something the Kethmori had not heard in centuries. Laughter. These humans were broadcasting entertainment to each other. Music, stories, jokes. They seemed to have no idea that the galaxy's most feared predators were about to arrive. How refreshingly innocent, Zextel said. It will almost be a shame to break them. But as the fleet entered the outer edge of the Sol system, something unexpected happened. The human transmissions did not stop. There were no emergency broadcasts, no panic signals, no desperate calls for help. Instead, the humans sent a simple message on all frequencies. Welcome to Sol system. We are excited to meet you. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions. Zextal stared at the communication display in disbelief. Excited? They were excited to meet the Kethmori? Either these humans were the most naive species in the galaxy, or something was very wrong with this picture. Captain, Vexhai said nervously, should we respond? Zextal's mandibles clicked slowly as he considered. In 3,000 years of conquest, no species had ever welcomed the Kethmori. Fear always came first, then desperation, then surrender or death. But excitement? That was new. Open a channel, he said finally. Let us see what manner of fools these Deathworlders truly are. The human delegation arrived in a ship that looked like it had been built for war, and then converted for peace. Admiral Marcus Webb stood at the head of the group, a graying man with calm eyes and hands that showed old scars. Beside him was Ambassador Sarah Chen, a woman who smiled like she was meeting old friends instead of the galaxy's most feared predators. Zextal had chosen to meet them on his flagship to make the proper impression. The Bone Harvest's meeting chamber was designed to inspire terror. The walls were covered in the preserved remains of defeated enemies. The lighting cast shadows that seemed to move on their own. The air itself carried the scent of death and decay. Most species took one look at the chamber and began begging for mercy before the negotiations even started. The humans looked around with obvious curiosity. Fascinating architecture, Ambassador Chen said, examining a wall display of vegan skulls. The bone structure suggests these beings had very advanced cognitive abilities. What happened to them? Zextal's mandibles clicked in confusion. She was asking about his trophies like a scientist studying artifacts in a museum. They resisted us. They are dead. All of them? Admiral Webb asked, sounding genuinely surprised. That seems wasteful. Dead beings can't work, can't create, can't contribute to society. Dead beings cannot resist, Zextal replied, allowing acid to drip from his mandibles for effect. The humans exchanged glances. Well, that's one approach, Chen said diplomatically, though it does limit your long-term strategic options. This was not going as Zextal had planned. These humans should be cowering in terror by now. Instead, they were offering tactical advice. He decided to demonstrate exactly what the Kethmori were capable of. You do not seem to understand your situation, Zextal said, rising to his full height. We are the Kethmori. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. Entire civilizations have surrendered rather than face our wrath. He focused his psychic abilities on the human delegation's junior diplomat, a young man named David Park. Zextal reached into the human's mind and flooded it with pure primal terror, the kind of fear that made strong warriors weep and break their own weapons rather than face the Kethmori. Park's face went pale and he began to shake. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but instead of collapsing in terror, he gritted his teeth and remained standing. After a few moments, the shaking stopped. That was intense, Park said, his voice slightly hoarse. How do you generate such specific neural responses? Is it electromagnetic manipulation or some form of quantum entanglement? Zextal stared in shock. The human had not only endured psychic torture, but was asking technical questions about it. You are not afraid? Oh, I was terrified, Park admitted. But fear is just another biological response. We learn to work through it. He looked genuinely interested. Could you do it again? I'd like to study the effect more carefully. The other humans nodded agreement. Admiral Webb pulled out a small device and began taking readings. The energy signature is unlike anything in our database. This could revolutionize our understanding of consciousness transfer. Zextal felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Confusion. These humans were treating his ultimate weapon like a learning opportunity. He turned to Ambassador Chen. Your subordinate nearly broke under psychic assault, yet you show no concern. Chen shrugged. David volunteered for first contact duty. He knew there might be risks. Besides, he's been through worse. Worse? Zextal's voice rose to a shriek. What could be worse than facing the terror of the Kethmori? Well, Admiral Webb said thoughtfully, there was that time he spent 3 months in Antarctica during the blizzard season. Or when he was trapped in that cave system during the earthquake. Oh, and the food poisoning incident in Mumbai. Those are natural disasters and accidents, Zextal protested. We are speaking of targeted psychological warfare. Right, Chen said. That would be like his tour in the Congo peacekeeping mission. Or his work with the hostage negotiation team. Humans do psychological warfare too. We've been practicing on each other for thousands of years. The chamber fell silent. Zextal's compound eyes shifted between the humans, trying to understand what was happening. In his experience, there were 2 types of beings in the galaxy. Those who feared the Kethmori and those who were too stupid to understand the danger. These humans clearly understood the danger, but they were not afraid. You threatened to destroy our world, Admiral Webb said. But you should know that we've faced extinction before. Asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, ice ages, nuclear war, climate change, pandemic diseases. We're still here. Those are natural phenomena, Zextal said dismissively. We are a directed force. We have weapons that can crack planets. So do we, Webb replied calmly. We've had planet-cracking capability for about 60 years now. We just choose not to use it. Zextal felt his confidence beginning to waver. You have weapons that can destroy worlds? Several different types, Chen confirmed. Though we prefer more subtle approaches. Destroying worlds is bad for the ecosystem. But you will fight to defend your world? Zextal asked, grasping for familiar ground. If necessary, Webb said. Though we'd prefer to find a peaceful solution. War is expensive and inefficient. We'd rather trade with you, learn from you, maybe find some mutually beneficial arrangement. We do not trade, Zextal snarled. We conquer, we rule. We take what we want. The humans looked at each other again. Park, who had recovered completely from the psychic assault, cleared his throat. That explains the economic inefficiencies we noticed in the occupied territories. Your resource extraction rates are about 40% below optimal. We could help you improve that, Chen offered helpfully. Human industrial engineers are very good at optimization problems. Zextal's mandibles began clicking rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation among his species. These humans were not just unafraid of the Kethmori. They were offering to help them become better conquerors. It was insane. You offered to aid your own destroyers? He demanded. Well, Admiral Webb said, first you'd have to successfully conquer us. And based on what we've seen so far, that might be more difficult than you think. The words hung in the air like a challenge. For the first time in his long life, Zextal wondered if the Kethmori had finally encountered prey that might bite back. Against every instinct screaming in his mind, Zextal accepted the human invitation to visit Earth. His advisors called it madness. The Kethmori did not tour worlds before conquering them. They simply arrived, terrified the population into submission, and began their rule. But these humans had sparked something Zextal had not felt in centuries: curiosity. The transport ship carrying him down to Earth's surface was disturbingly comfortable. The humans had actually designed the interior to accommodate his larger frame and different atmospheric needs. No conquered species had ever shown such consideration for Kethmori comfort. Welcome to Earth, said Dr. Emily Rodriguez, a human scientist who would serve as his guide. She was small even by human standards, with bright eyes and an enthusiasm that made Zextal's mandibles click nervously. We're so excited to show you around. It's not often we get visitors from other worlds. The first shock came when the transport broke through the clouds. Zextal had expected to see a scarred wasteland, the typical result of a Class 12 death world. Instead, he saw blue oceans that sparkled in the sunlight, green continents covered with life, and white clouds drifting peacefully across the sky. Your world appears pleasant, Zextal said, confused. Dr. Rodriguez laughed. Oh, Earth can be very pleasant. It can also be incredibly deadly. The key is knowing how to work with it instead of against it. They landed near what humans called New York City. Zextal emerged from the transport expecting to need protective gear against the harsh environment. Instead, he found himself breathing clean air under a warm sun. The gravity was slightly higher than he preferred, but perfectly manageable. The atmosphere contains significant oxygen, Zextal observed. This gas is highly corrosive to most species. We know. Dr. Rodriguez said cheerfully. Oxygen is toxic to many forms of life. That's why we use it to sterilize wounds and kill germs. But we evolved here, so we've adapted to breathe poison. Very handy for our immune systems. Zextal stared at her. You evolved to breathe poison? Among other things. Come on, let me show you some of our local wildlife. The tour that followed shattered every assumption Zextal had about Deathworlds. Dr. Rodriguez led him through something called Central Park, where humans walked casually among creatures that should have been apex predators. Children played near water that contained microorganisms capable of dissolving organic matter. Those small humans are in danger, Zextal pointed out as a group of children ran laughing through the grass. Not really, Dr. Rodriguez said. They've been vaccinated against most local diseases and their immune systems are quite robust. Human children are actually remarkably durable. They need to be. Childhood is basically survival training on Earth. She showed him pictures on her tablet of human children doing things that made Zextal's chitin crawl, swimming in oceans filled with creatures that could swallow a Kethmori whole, climbing vertical rock faces thousands of feet above the ground, playing in snow that could freeze most species solid in minutes. Your young engage in combat training? Zextal asked. We call it playing, Dr. Rodriguez explained. But yes, essentially. Tag is pursuit and evasion training. Hide and seek teaches stealth and detection. Sports develop coordination, teamwork, and competitive instincts. Most human games are actually combat simulations. They visited a hospital next where Zextal observed human medical practices. What he saw defied belief. Humans routinely survived injuries that would kill most galactic species. They replaced damaged organs with artificial ones or organs from other humans. They injected themselves with weakened versions of deadly diseases to build immunity. This human has been stabbed through the torso, Zextal observed, looking at a patient's x-rays. Car accident, the doctor corrected. Metal rod went right through his chest. Missed his heart by 2 centimeters. He'll be back to work in a few weeks. And this one appears to have been burned extensively. House fire. She went back in 3 times to rescue her cats. Tough lady. Zextal studied the charts in growing horror. Every patient had survived trauma that would have been instantly fatal to most species. More disturbing, the medical staff discussed these cases like routine occurrences. How many humans die from accidents each year? He asked. Dr. Rodriguez pulled up statistics on her tablet. About 4 million globally. Used to be much higher before we developed better safety measures. 4 million deaths is considered low. For a population of 8 billion living on a death world? Very low. We're quite good at surviving things that try to kill us. The next stop was a research facility where humans studied the most dangerous substances in the galaxy. Zextal watched in fascination as scientists worked with toxins that could wipe out entire planetary ecosystems. They handled these materials with careful respect but no apparent fear. This compound could kill every Kethmori on my ship, Zextal observed, looking at a vial of engineered bacteria. Probably, agreed Dr. Sarah Kim, the lead researcher. It's designed to break down chitin-based organisms. We developed it to fight locust swarms that were destroying crops. Of course, we also created the antidote at the same time. You created a weapon and its counter-weapon simultaneously. Standard procedure. We learned long ago that any weapon we create might eventually be used against us, usually by other humans. Dr. Rodriguez led him to a wall covered with photographs. These are some of Earth's more dangerous residents, she explained. We share the planet with them. Zextal examined the images with growing amazement. Creatures with venom that could dissolve metal, parasites that took control of their host's mind, bacteria that thrived in boiling acid, plants that could strangle a full-grown human. You coexist with these organisms? He asked. We have to. They were here first. Besides, many of them are quite useful once you understand them. This spider's venom is helping us develop new cancer treatments. This plant produces compounds we use in our medicines. This bacterium might hold the key to faster-than-light travel. You study your predators to gain their abilities? We study everything, Dr. Rodriguez said simply. Knowledge is survival on a death world. The more we understand about our environment, the better we can adapt to it. As the day continued, Zextal's worldview crumbled piece by piece. These humans had not merely survived their hostile world, they had turned it into a training ground. Every threat had become a teacher. Every danger had become a tool. Most unsettling of all, they seemed to genuinely enjoy the challenge. When Dr. Rodriguez showed him footage of humans deliberately jumping out of aircraft for recreation, or swimming with ocean predators for fun, or climbing mountains that killed many who attempted them, Zextal realized he was looking at something unprecedented. The humans were not victims of their death world. They were its graduates. Why do your people seek out danger? Zextal asked as they watched rock climbers scale a cliff face. Dr. Rodriguez considered the question seriously. Because safe things don't teach us anything new. Growth requires challenge. If we only did things we knew we could survive, we'd never discover what we're truly capable of. She looked up at the climbers with obvious pride. Every human who climbs that cliff comes down a little stronger, a little more confident, a little more capable of surviving whatever comes next. That's how we've always lived. Zextal felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. The Kethmori had spent 3,000 years avoiding challenges, taking only what was easy to conquer. These humans actively sought out the things that might kill them, then found ways to make those things make them stronger. For the first time since arriving in the Sol system, Zextal began to wonder if the Kethmori had made a terrible mistake. The breaking point came when Colonel Jake Morrison invited Zextal to observe human military exercises. The Kethmori captain had expected to see desperate defensive preparations, the frantic scrambling of prey species trying to delay the inevitable. Instead, he found himself watching something that made his echor run cold. The human soldiers moved like a single organism. They communicated without speaking, coordinated without commanders, and adapted to changing situations with fluid precision. These were not desperate defenders. These were apex predators demonstrating their hunting techniques. Your military trains for defense against the Kethmori? Zextal asked, trying to understand what he was seeing. Colonel Morrison, a lean man with scars that suggested extensive combat experience, shook his head. This is standard training. We've been doing exercises like this for thousands of years, long before we knew about aliens. But you are preparing for war. We're always preparing for war, Morrison said matter-of-factly. Peace is just the time between conflicts when we get ready for the next one. Any species that survives on Earth learns that lesson early. Zextal watched as human soldiers practiced something they called urban warfare. They moved through a mock city like shadows, appearing and disappearing with techniques that would make Kethmori infiltrators envious. When they engaged mock enemies, they did so with coordinated precision that spoke of extensive experience. These soldiers have fought many battles? Zextal asked. Most of them have seen combat, Morrison confirmed. We've had wars going on somewhere on Earth for most of recorded history. If it's not between nations, it's civil wars or insurgencies or peacekeeping operations. Humans are very good at fighting each other. You wage war against your own species? Morrison's expression grew grim. More often than we'd like to admit. We've learned that the most dangerous enemy a human will ever face is another human. Everything else is just practice. The demonstration continued with something Morrison called persistence hunting. A team of human soldiers began tracking a mechanical target across rough terrain. The target was faster than the humans and had a significant head start. By all logical measures, it should have escaped easily. Instead, the humans began a methodical pursuit that defied everything Zextal knew about hunting. They did not try to match the target's speed. They simply followed at their own pace, maintaining steady pressure, never stopping, never giving up. Your prey will escape, Zextal observed after several hours of watching the pursuit. No, Morrison said confidently. It won't. But it is faster than your hunters. Speed doesn't matter if you can't maintain it. That target is programmed to use typical escape patterns, short bursts of maximum speed followed by rest periods. The problem is humans don't need rest periods the same way other species do. Zextal watched in growing amazement as the human hunters gradually closed the distance. The target's speed bursts became shorter and less frequent. The humans maintained their steady pace, showing no signs of fatigue. This is how your ancestors hunted? Zextal asked. Among other methods. Humans are endurance predators. We can run farther than almost any other species on Earth. Our ancestors would chase megafauna across entire continents until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. Then we'd kill them with simple tools. You hunted creatures larger than yourselves? Morrison nodded. Mammoths, giant ground sloths, cave bears. If it could be eaten, humans figured out how to kill it. We're very good at finding weaknesses. The mechanical target finally stopped moving, its power systems exhausted. The human hunters reached it moments later, barely breathing hard after hours of pursuit. "Now imagine," Morrison said quietly, "that you're a Kethmori ship trying to escape from a human fleet. You're faster, but we don't need to rest. You can run for days, but we can follow for weeks. Eventually, you'll make a mistake or run out of fuel, and we'll be right there when you do." Zextal felt his mandibles clicking nervously. "You would pursue fleeing enemies across star systems? If necessary, though usually we'd try to end things more efficiently." The colonel led him to an observation platform overlooking a larger training area. What Zextal saw there challenged every assumption he had about human military capability. Soldiers were practicing with weapons that defied belief. Projectile weapons that could punch through starship armor. Energy weapons that made Kethmori plasma cannons look primitive. Chemical weapons that could sterilize entire continents. "These are your defensive weapons?" Zextal asked weakly. "These are some of our weapons," Morrison corrected. "The ones we're comfortable showing to aliens. The really dangerous stuff is classified." A group of soldiers jogged past and Zextal noticed they were carrying heavy packs while wearing masks that restricted their breathing. "Your warriors train under handicaps?" "Environmental conditioning. Those masks simulate high-altitude conditions. The packs add weight to build strength. We train under the worst conditions we can imagine, so actual combat feels easy by comparison." Morrison pointed to another group of soldiers who were injecting themselves with syringes. "What are they doing?" "Inoculations against biological weapons. Also adrenaline boosters, pain suppressors, and stimulants that let them fight for days without sleep. Standard combat cocktail." Zextal stared in horror. "You poison your own warriors?" "We enhance them. The human body can be improved in many ways if you know what you're doing. Those soldiers could fight for 72 hours straight if necessary." The demonstrations continued throughout the day, each one more disturbing than the last. Humans who could survive in vacuum for short periods. Soldiers who had replaced parts of their bodies with mechanical components. Warriors who could function normally in radiation levels that would kill most species instantly. "Your people modify themselves for combat?" Zextal asked. "When necessary. Humans are very adaptable. If the environment requires changes, we make them." The final demonstration shattered what remained of Zextal's confidence. A single human soldier, a woman named Sergeant Lisa Park, demonstrated something Morrison called baseline human capability. Without any mechanical enhancement or chemical modification, she proceeded to accomplish feats that should have been impossible. She ran 50 kilometers without stopping. She lifted weights that should have required mechanical assistance. She accurately fired weapons while hanging upside down, underwater and in complete darkness. She solved complex tactical problems while under simulated combat stress that would have broken most minds. "This is normal for your species?" Zextal asked, watching Sergeant Park casually bench press twice her body weight. "Park is above average, but not exceptionally so. Any human who trains properly can achieve similar results. We've had thousands of years to figure out what our bodies can do." Morrison's expression grew serious. "Captain Zextal, I want you to understand something. Everything you've seen today, the weapons, the tactics, the physical capabilities, we developed fighting each other. Humans have been at war with humans since before we discovered fire. We've spent our entire evolutionary history learning how to kill the most dangerous predator on our planet. Ourselves." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Zextal realized with dawning horror that the Kethmori had not encountered a primitive species lucky enough to survive their death world. They had found a race of apex predators who had been forged by millions of years of warfare against the deadliest enemy they could face. "The Galactic Council believes humans might slow the Kethmori advance," Zextal said slowly. Morrison's smile was cold as winter. "The Galactic Council doesn't understand what they're dealing with. Neither do you. The question isn't whether humans can stop the Kethmori, Captain. The question is whether we'll choose to let any of you survive the experience." "I must return to my ship," Zextal said finally. "I need to consider what I have learned." Tommy smiled and waved. "Okay, come back soon. Next time maybe you can meet my pet tarantula." As Zextal's transport lifted off from Earth's surface, he stared down at the blue and green world below. From space it looked peaceful, almost inviting. But he now knew the truth. That beautiful planet was a forge that had hammered a species of persistence hunters into the most dangerous predators the galaxy had ever produced. Back on his flagship, Zextal called a meeting of his senior officers. They gathered in the war chamber, expecting to hear plans for planetary bombardment and invasion. Instead, their captain stood before the star map and quietly changed the designation of the Sol system from target to protected territory. "Sir?" Vexhai asked in confusion. "What are your orders regarding the human homeworld?" Zextal's compound eyes reflected the light of distant stars as he made a decision that would reshape the future of the galaxy. "Signal the fleet. We are withdrawing from this system." "Withdrawing? But we have not yet conquered." "We cannot conquer them," Zextal said simply. "And more importantly, we should not try." His officers stared in shock. Vexhai's mandibles clicked in agitation. "Sir, they are only one species on one world." "We have conquered thousands of prey species," Zextal corrected. "The humans are not prey. They are what we could have become if our evolution had taken a different path. They are apex predators who learned to work together instead of dominating others." He activated the fleet communication system, sending his words to every Kethamori ship in the system. "All vessels, this is Captain Zextal. The Sol system is to be designated as protected apex territory. No Kethamori forces will enter human space without explicit authorization from the High Command." "But sir," another officer protested, "what will we tell the High Command? How do we explain our failure to conquer a single death world?" Zextal looked out at the stars where small human ships were already beginning to explore beyond their home system. Soon they would spread across the galaxy, carrying their cooperation and adaptability and stubborn refusal to accept defeat. "We tell them the truth," Zextal said quietly. "The galaxy has a new apex predator. They call themselves human, but I know what they really are." He paused, remembering a 7-year-old boy who had faced the terror of the Kethamori and asked if he could touch their shells. They are what nightmares have nightmares about, and they have just begun to explore the stars. As the Kethamori fleet withdrew into the darkness between worlds, Earth continued its rotation, unaware that the galaxy's most feared predators had just decided that some prey was too dangerous to hunt. The age of human expansion had begun. The moment that broke Zextal's understanding of the universe came from the most unexpected source. A child. Tommy Chen was 7 years old, Ambassador Chen's son, and he had been fascinated by the alien visitor since Zextal's arrival. While the adults conducted their tours and demonstrations, Tommy had been observing from a distance, his young eyes taking in details that escaped even trained diplomats. On Zextal's final day on Earth, as the Kethamori captain prepared to return to his ship, Tommy approached him directly. The boy walked up without fear, without hesitation, and without any of the survival instincts that should have kept him away from the galaxy's most dangerous predator. "Mr. Zextal," Tommy said, looking up at the towering alien with bright, curious eyes. "You're really cool looking. Can I touch your shell?" Every human in the area went silent. Ambassador Chen started forward, but Admiral Webb caught her arm. The security detail tensed, hands moving toward weapons. Dr. Rodriguez held her breath. Zextal stared down at the small human in complete bewilderment. In 3,000 years of conquest, no being had ever approached him voluntarily. Certainly no young creature had ever asked to touch him. Children of conquered species usually died of fear just from seeing Kethamori at a distance. "You are not afraid," Zextal said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Should I be?" Tommy asked, tilting his head. "You seem nice. Mom says you're from outer space. That's awesome. Do you have any pets on your ship?" Without thinking, Zextal instinctively activated his psychic abilities. He reached into the child's mind with a tendril of pure terror, the same mind-breaking fear that had shattered entire civilizations. Tommy's eyes widened and his breathing quickened, but instead of collapsing in screaming madness, he giggled. "That tickles," Tommy laughed. "Can you do it again?" "It feels like riding a roller coaster." Zextal jerked back as if he had been struck. The boy was not just unafraid. He was enjoying the psychic assault. The fear that destroyed adult minds was nothing more than an amusement ride to this human child. "How?" Zextal stammered. "How are you not terrified?" Tommy shrugged. "The way children do when adults ask obvious questions. My dad took me bungee jumping last month, and we went shark cage diving on vacation, and there was that time with the tornado when we had to hide in the basement. This is fun, but it's not really scary." Ambassador Chen stepped forward, her expression calm but watchful. "Tommy, maybe you should explain about Earth to Captain Zextal." The boy's face lit up with enthusiasm. "Oh yeah, Earth is the best. We have dinosaur bones and volcanoes and hurricanes and earthquakes and poisonous animals and space rocks that fall from the sky. And that's just the normal stuff. Tommy began counting on his fingers. My teacher says humans are super tough because Earth tried to kill us lots of times. But we're too stubborn to die. Like when the big rock hit and made the dinosaurs go away. But the little fuzzy mammals hid underground until it was safe. And those became us. Zextal's compound eyes tracked the child's animated gestures. Your world has attempted to exterminate your species? Lots of times, Tommy said cheerfully. Ice ages and supervolcanoes and climate change and meteor strikes and gamma-ray bursts and plague and stuff. But we always find a way to survive. Dad says humans are like cockroaches, we're really hard to get rid of. The boy paused thoughtfully. Except cockroaches are actually tougher than us. They can live without their heads for a week. Humans can only do that for a few minutes. But we're working on it. Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward with her tablet. Tommy's right about human resilience. Our species has survived at least 6 major extinction events. Each time we came back stronger and more adaptable. She showed Zextal a genetic timeline. Modern humans carry DNA from at least 4 different ancestral species. We didn't just survive and we absorbed our competitors. When we encountered Neanderthals, we didn't destroy them. We integrated them into our gene pool. You consumed other human species? Zextal asked. We bred with them. Ambassador Chen corrected. Humans are very good at making alliances, even with potential rivals. It's one of our survival strategies. Tommy tugged on Zextal's chitin to get his attention. Are you going to try to conquer Earth? Because that might not work very well. The innocent question hit Zextal like a physical blow. Why do you believe conquest would fail? Well, Tommy said, counting on his fingers again. First, you'd have to beat our military, and they're really good at fighting. Then you'd have to control 8 billion humans, and we don't like being told what to do, even by other humans. The boy's expression grew serious, showing a wisdom that seemed impossible in someone so young. Plus, if you hurt people, you'd make humans really angry. And angry humans are super dangerous. They do crazy things like fly planes into buildings or blow up ships with themselves on them. Mom says humans are scary when we're protecting our families. Admiral Webb nodded grimly. The boy's right. Humans have a saying. An armed society is a polite society. We've all been armed for our entire evolutionary history. Every human is potentially a weapon. Zextal looked around at the assembled humans, diplomats, scientists, soldiers, and a child, and finally understood what he was truly facing. These were not victims waiting to be conquered. They were apex predators who had spent millions of years learning to survive in the most hostile environment imaginable. More than that, they were pack hunters who had turned cooperation into an art form. Where the Kethmori ruled through fear and dominated through isolation, humans had built their civilization on mutual support and shared knowledge. Your species has no natural predators, Zextal said, the realization dawning like a cold star. Except other humans, Colonel Morrison said quietly. And we learned a long time ago that cooperation beats competition in the long run. It's more efficient to work together than to fight each other to extinction. Tommy looked up at Zextal with innocent eyes. Do you want to be friends? We could teach you cool stuff about Earth, and maybe you could teach us about space and aliens and psychic powers. The offer hung in the air like a bridge across an impossible gulf. Friendship, alliance, cooperation instead of conquest. In 3,000 years, no species had ever offered the Kethmori anything but submission or resistance. These humans were proposing something entirely different. Zextal's mandibles clicked slowly as he processed the implications. The Kethmori had built their empire on being the apex predator in a galaxy of prey species. But they had never encountered another apex predator before. They had never faced beings who could match their capabilities while offering something other than submission or destruction.